Hey guys, tonight we're stepping back, way back, to a time when the squawk of a pigeon might have been the most exciting sound you'd hear all day. Imagine the chill of a damp castle keep, the flickering light of a tallow candle, and the ever-present scent of wood smoke and, well, less pleasant things. You're huddled in a rough-spun tunic, the wind whistling through gaps in the stone, and suddenly, a flutter at the window. It's not a raven, not a hawk. It's a pigeon, and its arrival could literally mean the difference between life and death, triumph or despair. You probably wouldn't survive a single week in this era, let alone a lifetime. Disease, famine, brigands around every bend. It was a tough gig. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe. But only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Let me know where you're listening from and what time it is for you in the comments below. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You find yourself in the heart of a medieval city, the streets a muddy tapestry of human and animal traffic. The air is thick with the aroma of baking bread, unwashed bodies, and something that suspiciously smells like pigeon droppings. And you wouldn't be wrong. Pigeons, you quickly discover, are everywhere. They roost on ledges, peck at discarded scraps in the gutters, and occasionally, with a startling flutter, take flight from beneath your very feet. But these aren't just any birds. These are creatures of immense, if sometimes overlooked value. You see a young boy, no older than yourself, tending to a dovercote on the roof of a merchant's house. He coos softly to the birds, a strange, almost reverent sound in the cacophony of the street. You realize these aren't just pests to be shooed away. They are assets, carefully managed and highly prized. Think of them as the medieval equivalent of your internet connection, but with feathers and a penchant for leaving little white splatters. Historians still debate the exact moment pigeons transitioned from wild birds to domesticated assets, but by the medieval period, their utility was undeniable. One mainstream historical fact you quickly learn is that the pigeon, or rock dove, was a crucial source of food. When winter winds howled and crops failed, a dovercote full of plump pigeons could mean the difference between a family starving and surviving. Their meat was considered a delicacy by the wealthy, a reliable protein source for the common folk. You see a cook haggling over a cage of live pigeons in the market, their iridescent necks shimmering in the weak sunlight. He pinches one, feeling for its plumpness, a grim satisfaction on his face. These birds, he grumbles, are worth more than gold when the snow flies. It's a harsh reality, but one that underscores the bird's importance. Beyond the dinner plate, you start to notice other, less obvious uses. You watch as a noble's messenger untees a small scroll from the leg of a returning pigeon. The bird, after its journey, looks tired but proud, like it's just delivered the most important tweet of the century. This, you realize, is communication medieval style. Pigeons, with their incredible homing instincts, were the original express delivery service. Imagine trying to send a message across a war-torn landscape, through forests teeming with bandits, or over rivers without bridges. A human messenger faced countless perils, but a pigeon, soaring high above, had a much better chance of reaching its destination. You chuckle to yourself, imagining the frustration of a medieval lord trying to explain lost in transit to a pigeon. No, Bartholomew, I specifically said deliver to the Duke's castle, not nap on a barn roof and eat berries. A quirky tidbit you stumble upon is the sheer architectural grandeur of some dovercotes. These weren't just simple sheds. Some were towering, elaborate structures, almost like miniature castles themselves, designed to house hundreds, even thousands of pigeons. They were symbols of wealth and status, as much as they were practical farm buildings. A lord with a magnificent dovercote was signaling his prosperity and his ability to feed his household, even in lean times. You peer into the entrance of one such structure, noticing the intricate rows of nesting boxes, each one a cozy apartment for a pigeon family. It makes you wonder if medieval pigeons ever complained about their neighbours. "Oh, Marge, those squabs upstairs are making a racket again!" The legal status of pigeons also fascinates you. Ownership of dovercoats and the birds within them was often a jealously guarded privilege, particularly in France, where the droit de Colombier right of dovercoat was a significant feudal right. Only lords or wealthy landowners were permitted to build these structures and keep large numbers of pigeons. This meant that the common peasant, while they might occasionally catch a wild pigeon, couldn't simply set up their own pigeon farm. This led to ongoing tensions and sometimes outright poaching. You hear whispers of peasants sneaking into lordly estates under the cover of darkness, hoping to snatch a few plump birds for their hungry families. It was a high-stakes game of hide and seek, where the prize was dinner and the penalty was a severe beating, or worse. The idea of pigeon-related litigation makes you smile. "Your Honour, the defendant's pigeon clearly trespassed into my airspace and consumed my barley!" You shake your head, realizing how interconnected every aspect of medieval life was, down to the smallest feathered creature. You continue your exploration. The pervasive scent of pigeon droppings, now almost a comforting constant in the medieval air. Your focus shifts from the pigeon's role as a meal to its undeniable prowess as a winged courier. You stand near the city gates, watching a group of merchants prepare for a journey. One of them carefully attaches a small, sealed tube to the leg of a pigeon, whispering something to the bird as if imparting vital instructions. You realize that this isn't just a simple message. It's intelligence, trade information, perhaps even a declaration of love. The sheer speed and reliability of a pigeon carrying a message was revolutionary. A human messenger, even on a fast horse, would be hampered by terrain, weather, and the ever-present threat of ambush. A pigeon, however, could fly in a relatively straight line, unburdened by roads or rivers, often reaching its destination far quicker. You imagine the anticipation? The nail-biting wait for a pigeon to return, bringing news of a distant battle, a successful harvest, or the safe arrival of a beloved family member. It was the medieval equivalent of checking your phone for an urgent text message, but with a much higher chance of it getting eaten by a hawk. The use of pigeons for military communication was particularly sophisticated. Castles and fortresses often maintained their own pigeon lofts, ensuring a constant supply of feathered messengers. During sieges, these birds were invaluable. A besieged garrison could send out messages detailing their dwindling supplies, the strength of the enemy, or appeals for reinforcements. Conversely, those outside the walls could send in instructions or news of approaching relief. You picture a brave knight, penned within his crumbling castle, releasing a pigeon with a desperate plea for aid. The bird, a tiny speck against the vast sky, carries the hopes of hundreds on its delicate wings. It's a poignant image, highlighting the vulnerability and ingenuity of medieval warfare. Historians still argue whether some of the earliest documented uses of messenger pigeons in warfare predate the medieval period significantly, with some pointing to Roman and even ancient Egyptian uses. However, the systematic deployment in medieval European conflicts truly cemented their place in military history. You also discover a more whimsical, yet equally important, application: racing. Yes, pigeon racing wasn't just a modern pastime. It had its roots in the medieval era. Lords and wealthy individuals would wager on the speed of their birds, adding a layer of sport and entertainment to their lives. You can almost hear the shouts of the crowd, the excited chatter as the birds are released, a flurry of feathers disappearing into the sky. It's a low-stakes gamble, perhaps, compared to a jousting tournament, but it's a clear indication that even in a harsh world, people found joy in the simple thrill of competition. You smirk, thinking of the medieval equivalent of fantasy pigeon leagues. My money's on Sir Hopsalot in the fifth heat. He's got excellent tail feathers. Beyond communication and sport, pigeons played a surprising role in navigation, or at least in guiding ships. Though not as widely used as for land-based communication, some seafarers would carry pigeons on long voyages. If lost or seeking land, they would release a bird, hoping it would fly back towards its home port or a known landmass, thereby indicating the direction of safety. It was a desperate measure, perhaps, but a testament to the trust placed in these birds' remarkable sense of direction. You imagine a wary sailor, adrift on a vast, featureless ocean, releasing his last pigeon, watching it disappear into the haze with a silent prayer. It's a stark reminder of the perils of medieval travel and the clever ways people adapted to overcome them. A quirky detail you pick up is the meticulous care sometimes given to these prized birds. Owners would feed them specific diets, provide comfortable roosts, and even train them with rudimentary signals. It was a level of animal husbandry that went beyond mere utility, hinting at a genuine fondness for their feathered employees. You see a stable hand meticulously cleaning a pigeon's feeder, humming a tune as he works. He treats the birds with a quiet respect, almost as if they are colleagues rather than property. These little fellows, he mutters, they work harder than half the knights in this castle, and they don't complain about the food. The breeding of pigeons also became an art form. Certain bloodlines were prized for their speed, endurance, or homing ability. This led to a rudimentary form of genetic selection, long before the science of genetics was even dreamed of. Breeders would carefully choose which birds to pair, hoping to propagate desirable traits. It was a pragmatic approach, driven by the desire for more efficient messengers and plumper meals. You observe a master pigeon breeder, his eyes gleaming with a mixture of pride and calculation as he examines a young squab. He holds it gently, turning it over, assessing its potential. It's a quiet dedication to a humble creature, but one that underpins much of the medieval world's reliance on these birds. The sheer volume of pigeons kept in some estates is astounding. Imagine hundreds, even thousands, of birds nesting and flying around, a living, breathing cloud of feathered productivity. The noise alone must have been deafening, a constant murmur and cooing that would have been the soundtrack to many medieval lives. As you delve deeper into the medieval world, you begin to appreciate the subtle social stratifications inherent in pigeon ownership. It's not just about having pigeons, it's about how many you have and where you keep them. The magnificent dovecotes you've observed are not merely functional structures, but powerful symbols of status. A lord with a grand dovecote, bristling with hundreds of birds, was advertising his wealth and power, his ability to not only feed his household, but also to communicate swiftly across vast distances. It was a clear declaration to rivals and subjects alike. I am well connected, well informed, and well fed. You imagine a visiting dignitary casting an envious eye over a particularly impressive dovecote, recognizing the silent message it conveyed. Ah, the Count clearly enjoys his pigeon pie. This symbolic value extended beyond the purely practical. Pigeons, with their seemingly effortless flight, were often associated with purity, peace, and even the Holy Spirit in Christian iconography. You notice them depicted in illuminated manuscripts, often perched on the shoulders of saints or hovering above sacred scenes. This spiritual connection added another layer of meaning to their presence, elevating them beyond mere livestock. It was a curious blend of the mundane and the sacred, where a bird that might end up in a stew could also symbolize divine grace. Historians still argue about the precise theological interpretations of pigeons in medieval art, with some suggesting a direct link to ancient symbolism, while others emphasize their natural attributes of gentleness and loyalty. You learn that controlling access to pigeons, particularly their ability to forage, was a significant point of contention. While lords had their grand dovercoats, the common peasants' crops were often fair game for hungry flocks. This led to frequent disputes, with peasants trying to scare away or net birds that were devouring their precious grain. It was a constant battle, a micro-level class struggle playing out in the fields. You hear a farmer grumbling, shaking his fist at a flock of pigeons descending on his newly sown field. "They eat more than my pigs, those winged rascals!" It's a grievance as old as agriculture itself, highlighting the complex relationship between humans, animals, and resources in a pre-industrial world. The sheer volume of pigeon droppings, or guano, also becomes apparent as you spend more time in this era. And it's not just a nuisance, it's a valuable commodity. Pigeon guano was a highly prized fertilizer, rich in nitrogen, which was essential for healthy crops. Imagine a medieval farmer carefully scooping up the accumulated droppings from the floor of a dovercoat, treating it like liquid gold. It was a vital input for agricultural productivity, a testament to the circular economy of the medieval farm. You see a worker carrying a large basket of guano, the pungent aroma preceding him. It's a smell you've come to associate with both wealth and sustenance. A good dovercoat, you overhear someone remark, is worth its weight in, well, what comes out of its weight in birds. A quirky tidbit you discover is that some medieval texts describe methods of training pigeons to distinguish between different individuals or even different colors. While the extent of this training is debated, it speaks to an understanding of pigeon intelligence that goes beyond simple homing instincts. It suggests a more nuanced relationship between humans and these birds, a recognition of their cognitive abilities. You picture a medieval trainer, perhaps using treats or gentle cooing, attempting to teach a pigeon to land only on a specific window or to recognize a particular person. It's a fascinating glimpse into early animal psychology. The threat of disease, both to pigeons and from them to humans, was a constant concern. While pigeons provided food and communication, they also carried various ailments. Medieval people, lacking modern scientific understanding, would have attributed these outbreaks to bad air, divine displeasure, or other supernatural causes. However, the connection between large animal populations and the spread of sickness would have been observed, even if not fully understood. You see a dovercoat worker carefully inspecting his birds for signs of illness, perhaps isolating a sick bird to prevent the spread. It's a rudimentary form of public health, driven by the pragmatic need to protect a valuable resource. A sickly pigeon, you hear someone lament, is worse than no pigeon at all. It's a grim reality check, reminding you that every benefit came with its own set of risks. The architecture of dovercoats themselves varied greatly, from simple timber structures to elaborate stone towers. This diversity reflects regional building traditions, the resources available, and the social standing of the owner. Some dovercoats were integrated into castle walls, offering protection to the birds and ensuring their proximity to the lord. Others were standalone buildings, sometimes fortified to prevent poaching. You marvel at the ingenuity involved in creating these homes for thousands of birds, designed to provide safety, warmth, and easy access for cleaning and harvesting. It was an art form in itself, a testament to the importance placed on these feathered residents. The careful placement of nesting boxes, the ventilation systems, even the design of the entry points, all were meticulously planned to maximize the well-being and productivity of the flock. You continue your journey through the medieval landscape, the constant presence of pigeons now feeling entirely natural, almost expected. You've seen them as food messengers and symbols of status. Now, you begin to uncover their more subtle, yet equally significant, roles in the tapestry of medieval life. One fascinating application you discover is their use in judicial processes. particularly in the form of what might be called pigeon post for justice. Imagine a remote village, far from the king's court, where a legal dispute arises. Sending a human messenger with documents or appeals could take weeks, even months. A pigeon, however, could carry a plea for justice or a judgment order with remarkable speed. This wasn't a universal practice, and historians still debate its prevalence, but there are anecdotal accounts suggesting its sporadic use. You picture a village elder, his brow furrowed with concern, carefully tying a parchment to a pigeon's leg, his hopes for a fair resolution taking flight with the bird. It's a testament to the ingenuity of a time when communication was a luxury. May this bird fly as straight as justice itself, you imagine him murmuring. Beyond legal matters, pigeons found their way into the world of entertainment in ways that might surprise you. While not as prominent as jousting or minstrel performances, trained pigeons were sometimes part of traveling shows or courtly spectacles. Imagine a jester attempting to train a pigeon to perform simple tricks, perhaps carrying a tiny flag or pecking at a specific target. It's a light-hearted diversion, a small moment of amusement in an often grim world. You chuckle at the thought of a pigeon refusing to cooperate, flapping off mid-performance. Clearly this bird demands a more substantial payment than mere seeds. A quirky tidbit you learn is about specific pigeon breeds developed for aesthetic purposes. While most medieval pigeons were bred for utility meat, message carrying, or guano production, some wealthy individuals began to cultivate pigeons for their unusual plumage, unique vocalizations, or distinctive flight patterns. This was the precursor to modern pigeon fancying, where the beauty and rarity of a bird became its primary value. You see a noblewoman admiring a particularly striking pigeon, its feathers shimmering with an unusual iridescence, a silent testament to her refined taste. It's a small luxury, but one that speaks volumes about the burgeoning appreciation for aesthetics, even in a pragmatic age. The economic implications of the pigeons were vast and far-reaching. Beyond the direct sale of birds for meat or as messengers, the trade in pigeon guano was a significant industry. Farmers would purchase large quantities of this rich fertilizer to improve their crop yields, and specialized merchants would transport it from dovecotes to agricultural lands. This created a complex network of producers, traders, and consumers, all reliant on the humble pigeon. You witness carts laden with sacks of guano trundling through the market. The pungent smell a clear indication of their valuable cargo. It's a smell of prosperity, even if it's not the most pleasant aroma. Ah, the sweet smell of money, you hear a merchant declare, holding his nose with one hand. The maintenance of dovecotes required specialized knowledge and labor. Dovecote keepers were skilled individuals who understood the habits of pigeons, how to manage their populations, and how to keep them healthy. They were responsible for cleaning the dovecotes, ensuring a steady supply of food and water, and protecting the birds from predators. It was a dedicated profession, vital to the smooth functioning of any large estate. You observe a dovecote keeper, his hands calloused and his face weathered, meticulously inspecting nesting boxes, his movements precise and efficient. He moves among the hundreds of birds with an almost parental care, a silent understanding passing between man and bird. These birds know me better than my own wife, he muses half to himself. Historians still debate the extent to which pigeons were used in psychological warfare. While not as overtly destructive as trebuchets or siege engines, the release of messenger pigeons by a besieged army could have a profound psychological effect on the besiegers. Imagine a group of wary soldiers, months into a siege, seeing a pigeon soar out of the castle, carrying a message that could either mean relief or utter despair for the trapped inhabitants. It could sow doubt, create false hope, or simply serve as a constant reminder that the enemy was still communicating, still organized. It was a subtle weapon, but potentially powerful in its own right. You ponder the psychological impact of seeing a solitary pigeon fly free from a seemingly impenetrable fortress, a tiny symbol of defiance or desperation. The relationship between falconry and pigeon keeping was also complex. Falcons, prized hunting birds, were natural predators of pigeons. This meant that Dovercote owners had to take measures to protect their flocks from wild raptors, often employing nets, traps, or even guarding their dovercotes with dogs. However, trained falcons were also used to hunt wild pigeons for sport and food, creating a strange dichotomy where the pigeon was both a valuable asset to be protected and a legitimate quarry. You observe a falconer, his gaze sharp and focused, his magnificent bird perched on his gloved hand. He glances at a flock of pigeons wheeling overhead, a predatory glint in his eye. It's a dangerous world for a pigeon, even a domesticated one. It's a bird-eat-bird world out there, you think, with a grim smile. You step further into the intricate web of medieval life, and the pigeon's role continues to unfold in unexpected ways. Beyond their documented uses, you start to uncover the realm of speculation, where the lines between established fact and historical conjecture blur. One such intriguing area is the potential, albeit rare, use of pigeons in espionage. While human spies were undoubtedly the primary method of intelligence gathering, imagine a scenario where a message was too sensitive, or the human risk too high. A pigeon carrying a coded message could slip through enemy lines with far less chance of detection than a human agent. Historians still debate the true extent of this practice, but the possibility alone is enough to spark your imagination. You envision a cloaked figure under the cover of a moonless night, releasing a pigeon from a hidden crevice, the fate of a kingdom perhaps resting on the tiny scroll tied to its leg. "Fly true, little spy," you whisper to the imaginary bird. It's the original tweet gone rogue. The training of these messenger pigeons was far more sophisticated than simply letting them fly from one point to another. Owners would often loft their birds, meaning they would establish a home base for the pigeons and then transport them to various distant locations, releasing them to fly back. This process could be repeated multiple times, conditioning the birds to associate the release point with the journey home. This meticulous training was essential for reliable communication, ensuring the birds knew where to go, even in unfamiliar territory. You watch a trainer patiently guiding a young bird, coaxing it back to its dovercote, rewarding it with grain. It's a quiet dedication, a testament to the effort invested in these feathered couriers. "You're a good bird, a very good bird," he murmurs, his voice soft. A quirky detail you come across is the use of pigeon bones in folk medicine and magical practices. While modern science dismisses these as superstitions, in the medieval period, remedies derived from animals were common. Pigeon bones, feathers, or even blood might be incorporated into concoctions meant to cure ailments, ward off evil spirits, or bring good luck. You see an old woman in the market selling small amulets made of carved pigeon bone, promising protection against the plagued. It's a reminder of the desperate measures people would take in an age of limited medical knowledge. For a small fee, this will keep the goblins away. She assures a skeptical customer. The economic infrastructure surrounding pigeons was surprisingly robust. Beyond the Dovercote owners and guano merchants, there were specialized pigeon breeders who focused on improving the stock, trainers who worked with messenger birds, and even artisans who crafted the tiny tubes for carrying messages. It was a niche but vital industry, employing a significant number of people. You imagine a medieval pigeon market, a bustling scene where buyers and sellers haggle over the best breeding pairs, the fastest flyers, or the plumpest squabs. The air would be filled with the cooing and fluttering of hundreds of birds, a unique soundtrack to medieval commerce. Historians still debate the ethical treatment of medieval pigeons. While many owners undoubtedly valued their birds and treated them with care, The reality was that these were primarily working animals, and their welfare was secondary to their utility. Was it cruel to force them to fly long distances in harsh weather? Was it humane to harvest squabs for meat? These are questions that modern sensibilities bring to the past, reminding us of the evolving relationship between humans and animals. You reflect on the practicalities of survival in a harsh world, where every resource was exploited to its fullest potential. The social gatherings around pigeon keeping were also a feature of medieval life. While not formal clubs in the modern sense, individuals with a shared interest in pigeons, whether for sport breeding or communication, would undoubtedly exchange knowledge, tips, and even birds. These informal networks would have been crucial for sharing best practices and advancing the art of pigeon husbandry. You picture a group of men gathered outside a dovercote, animatedly discussing the merits of different feed mixes or the homing ability of a particular lineage. It's a shared passion, a bond formed over feathers and flight. "My cousin's pigeon flew from ruin in 3 hours. A new record!" one boasts. The very fragility of pigeon communication, despite its speed, meant that messages were often duplicated or sent by multiple birds to increase the chances of arrival. This redundancy was a crucial aspect of medieval information transfer. Losing a single bird or a single message could have catastrophic consequences, so sending backups was a common practice. You envision a series of pigeons being released, each carrying the same vital message, a feathered safety net ensuring the information reached its destination. It's a fascinating insight into the logistical challenges of medieval communication and the ingenious ways people sought to overcome them. The sense of urgency surrounding these messages would have been palpable, making every successful arrival a cause for quiet celebration. As you continue your immersion in the medieval world, the sheer ubiquity and multifaceted nature of the pigeon become even more apparent. You start to notice how their presence or absence could influence daily routines and strategic decisions. For instance, you learn about their use in assessing environmental conditions. A flock of healthy, thriving pigeons indicated a stable environment, sufficient food sources, and relative peace. Conversely, dwindling numbers or sickly birds could be an early warning sign of famine, disease, or even impending conflict that disrupted their usual foraging grounds. It was an organic, living barometer of the surrounding landscape. You see a seasoned farmer looking up at the sky, observing the flight patterns of pigeons, his expression a mixture of worry and relief. "The birds are restless today," he mutters, a storm brews, or perhaps trouble. The architectural integration of dovercotes into castles and manor houses wasn't just about convenience. It was also a defensive measure. Having the birds and their vital messages within the secure walls of a fortress meant they were less susceptible to theft or attack by rival factions. It was a strategic placement, ensuring the continuity of communication even in times of siege. You walk through the remains of a medieval castle, noticing the still visible openings and niches that once housed hundreds of pigeons, a silent testament to their importance in times of war. It's a reminder that even the smallest creatures could play a role in grand military strategies. You muse. "I bet the castle pigeons had better security than most peasants." A quirky detail you uncover relates to the pigeons' natural predators. While falcons were a major threat, you also hear tales of stoats, weasels, and even large rats infiltrating dovercotes, preying on eggs and squabs. This constant battle against predators required vigilance from dovercote keepers, who often employed traps, guard dogs, and even specialized architectural features to deter these unwelcome visitors. It was a perpetual arms race, a micro-ecosystem of survival playing out within the walls of the dovercote. You imagine a particularly crafty rat attempting to outwit a sleepy guard dog for a midnight snack of squab. Historians still debate the extent to which pigeons were used in long-distance trade, While human caravans and ships were the primary means of commercial exchange, the ability to send rapid updates on market prices, availability of goods, or changes in demand could have been invaluable. Imagine a merchant in Bruges receiving a pigeon message from Venice detailing a sudden surge in the price of spices, allowing him to adjust his purchasing strategy in real time. This quick flow of information, however limited, could have provided a significant economic advantage. You envision a network of pigeon-based stock market updates, a medieval Bloomberg terminal fluttering on the wind. The role of women in pigeon keeping is another area that comes to your attention. While often associated with male-dominated pursuits like hunting or warfare, women undoubtedly played a significant part in the daily care and management of pigeons, particularly in smaller households or on farms where pigeons were a key food source. Their knowledge of animal husbandry would have been crucial for maintaining healthy and productive flocks. You see a woman, her hands stained with flour, gently feeding a handful of grain to a pigeon perched on her windowsill. It's a quiet, everyday act of care, often overlooked in the grand narratives of history. These birds, she tells her daughter, are as important as the chickens, perhaps more so. The legislative framework surrounding pigeons, particularly the droit de Colombier right of Dovercote in France, was a persistent source of class tension. This exclusive right meant that only the nobility or wealthy landowners could construct dovercotes, preventing peasants from raising pigeons for food or guano on a large scale. This fueled resentment, as peasants saw their crops consumed by the lord's pigeons while being forbidden from benefiting from them themselves. You hear muffled complaints about winged taxes and flying freeloaders. It's a striking example of how a seemingly minor detail of medieval life could encapsulate broader social injustices. This deep-seated frustration occasionally led to acts of defiance, like the aforementioned poaching, or even sabotage of dovercotes. Though such actions were risky, the practice of lofting pigeons or establishing their home base involved a period of acclimatization. Newly acquired pigeons would be kept confined for a period, often several weeks, within their new dovercote before being released. This allowed them to imprint on their new home, associating it with food, shelter, and safety. This meticulous process was essential to ensure their homing instincts would guide them back to the correct location. You observe a new shipment of pigeons, temporarily housed in a secure section of a dovercote, restlessly cooing, eager to take flight. The dovercote keeper patiently waits, knowing that rushing the process would jeopardize their reliability. It's a testament to the methodical and patient nature of medieval husbandry. You continue your exploration, the subtle rustle of feathers and distant cooing a constant soundtrack to your journey through the medieval world. You realize that beyond their practical applications, pigeons held a significant place in the cultural imagination of the time. They appear in proverbs, folk tales, and even allegories, often symbolizing peace, innocence, or fidelity. This widespread cultural presence speaks to their deep integration into daily life and thought. You hear a bard singing a ballad about a faithful messenger pigeon carrying a lover's plea across enemy lines, a romanticized version of their true utility. As true as the pigeon to its coat, he croons, his voice echoing in the tavern. One intriguing, if unconfirmed, use of pigeons is in what might be called early warning systems for natural disasters. While there's no widespread documentation, some historians speculate that communities living near volatile rivers or earthquake-prone areas might have observed changes in pigeon behavior as an indicator of impending danger. A sudden, inexplicable flight from a dovercote or a frantic circling could have been interpreted as a sign to seek higher ground or shelter. It's a fascinating thought, a form of biomimicry long before the term existed. You imagine a small village, its inhabitants looking to the sky, not just for rain, but for signs from their feathered forecasters. The pigeons are acting strange, mother. Something is amiss! A quirky tidbit you discover relates to the use of pigeon coops in urban environments. While grand dovecotes were the purview of the wealthy, even common townspeople would often keep a few pigeons in small coops on their rooftops or in their backyards. These birds provided a supplemental source of food, a bit of guano for a small garden plot, and perhaps even a pet. It was a scaled-down version of pigeon keeping, highlighting its accessibility and utility across different social strata. You see a humble dwelling with a rickety wooden coop on its roof, a few pigeons pecking contentedly inside. It's a small detail, but one that underscores the bird's pervasive presence. Historians still debate the extent of pigeon hybridization in the medieval period. While the rock dove was the primary species, there would have been opportunities for cross-breeding with other wild pigeon species, either accidentally or intentionally. This could have led to new color variations, altered flight patterns, or even slightly different behaviors. How much of this was intentional, and how much was simply the result of natural intermingling, remains a point of scholarly discussion. You ponder the genetic tapestry of medieval pigeons, a living mosaic of adaptation and evolution. The very act of feeding pigeons in the medieval world carried a subtle social meaning. For the wealthy, it was a display of their abundance, an almost casual scattering of grain that spoke of surplus. For the common folk, it was a more practical act, ensuring their small flock remained healthy and productive. Yet, it also fostered a connection, a daily ritual that reinforced the symbiotic relationship between humans and birds. You observe a maid scattering grain in a courtyard, the pigeons flocking around her feet, a flurry of motion and hungry cooing. It's a simple scene, but one that reveals the rhythm of daily life. "Come, my little friends, eat well," she calls. The widespread nature of pigeon keeping also meant that knowledge about these birds was widely disseminated. Farmers, soldiers, merchants, and even cooks would have possessed at least a rudimentary understanding of pigeon behavior, health, and care. This informal network of knowledge transfer ensured that best practices, however rudimentary, were shared and adopted across communities. You imagine conversations in taverns and markets, snippets of advice exchanged about remedies for sick birds or tips for improving homing abilities. It was a collective wisdom, built on generations of observation and experience. A bit of garlic in their water. That's what old Agnes swears by! The darker side of pigeon keeping also comes into view's disease transmission. While modern science has a clear understanding of avian diseases and their potential to jump to humans, medieval people would have observed the outbreaks without knowing the cause. Pigeon pox, Newcastle disease, and even various parasites would have afflicted flocks, causing losses and, potentially, spreading to other livestock or even humans. This risk was an inherent part of living closely with animals, a constant background threat in a pre-scientific age. You see a farmer grimly culling a sick bird from his flock, an unpleasant but necessary task to prevent further spread. It's a harsh reality, a reminder of the fragility of life in the medieval world. Yet, the benefits of pigeons clearly outweighed the risks, making them an indispensable part of daily survival and flourishing. As your journey through the medieval period continues, the profound influence of pigeons on the texture of daily life becomes increasingly clear. You start to notice the subtle ways they shaped legal codes, economic practices, and even the very landscape. For example, you learn about the elaborate systems sometimes put in place to mark pigeons, ensuring that valuable messenger birds or prize breeding stock could be identified. This could involve rudimentary leg bands, distinctive feather markings, or even small, unique bells attached to their legs. This level of care and identification speaks to the significant monetary and strategic value placed on individual birds. You observe a dovecote keeper carefully examining a pigeon's leg band, a symbol of its lineage and purpose. "This one's a champion, straight from the Duke's own loft," he proudly declares. The concept of pigeon rights, or, more accurately, the lack thereof for commoners, continues to highlight the stark class divisions of the era. The exclusive privilege of dovecote ownership for the nobility meant that pigeons were, in a very real sense, a symbol of aristocratic power. They were an embodiment of the feudal system, flying above the heads of the very people whose crops they often consumed without repercussion. You hear the simmering resentment in a peasant's voice as he complains about the Lord's pigeons. "They eat our grain, and we can't even touch them! It's a flying tyranny!" It's a vivid example of how a seemingly minor issue could become a focal point of class struggle. A quirky historical tidbit you unearth concerns the use of pigeons in monastic communities. Monasteries, often self-sufficient entities, would keep pigeons not just for food and guano, but also for communication with other monastic houses. Particularly during times of plague or political upheaval, these birds facilitated the exchange of scholarly texts, religious directives, and news, connecting a vast network of spiritual and intellectual centers. You picture a quiet monk, painstakingly transcribing a message to be carried by a pigeon, his work part of a silent, feathered information highway. "May this message bring wisdom and peace to our brothers," he intones as he releases the bird. Historians still debate the specific methods of training pigeons for night flight. While most communication happened during daylight hours, the strategic advantage of sending messages under the cover of darkness would have been immense, particularly in military contexts. Was there a specific breed more suited to low light conditions? Were special training techniques employed, perhaps involving gradual exposure to darkness? The answers remain elusive, adding a layer of mystery to the remarkable capabilities of these medieval couriers. You imagine a pigeon navigating by moonlight, a silent shadow against the stars, a true unsung hero of nocturnal communication. The economic infrastructure around pigeons extended to specialized trades. Beyond the dovecote keepers and guano merchants, there might have been individuals who specialized in trapping wild pigeons for domestication, or those who traded in specific breeds from distant lands. This nascent pigeon industry was a small but significant part of the medieval economy, demonstrating the diverse ways people made a living in a pre-industrial world. You see a grizzled trapper displaying a cage of newly caught wild pigeons, their eyes wide with fear, destined for a new life as domesticated assets. "Fresh stock just caught this morning," he barks. The aesthetic appeal of pigeons, particularly for the nobility, extended to their presence in gardens and courtyards. Well-maintained dovecotes were often focal points in aristocratic estates, adding to the beauty and charm of the grounds. The sight and sound of pigeons flying overhead, circling their home, contributed to the idyllic image of a lord's manor. It was a living ornament, a dynamic element of the landscape. You observe a lady of the court sketching a flock of pigeons in her garden, their graceful movements capturing her artistic eye. It's a reminder that even in a harsh world, there was still room for beauty and leisure. "They are like living jewels," she muses. The strategic importance of pigeon messengers during sieges cannot be overstated. A successful pigeon message could rally reinforcements, deliver vital intelligence about enemy movements, or even boost the morale of a besieged garrison by providing a link to the outside world. Conversely, intercepting enemy pigeons was a high priority. Archers would be tasked with shooting down incoming or outgoing birds, turning the sky into a silent battlefield. You picture a tension-filled moment as an archer draws his bow, aiming for a tiny speck against the vast expanse of the sky, knowing the fate of a castle could depend on that single shot. It's a game of cat and mouse, played out in the air with feathered stakes. One shot, one message, the archer mutters, his breath held. As you delve deeper into the medieval psyche, you uncover the surprising emotional connections people formed with their pigeons. Beyond their utilitarian value, these birds were often seen as pets, companions, and even symbols of hope. You witness a grizzled veteran of many campaigns softly stroking the head of a pigeon perched on his shoulder, a rare moment of tenderness in a hardened world. It's a poignant reminder that even in an era of hardship, human beings sought comfort and connection with the creatures around them. "He saved my life once," the old soldier murmurs, carried a message that brought relief. The logistical challenges of maintaining large pigeon populations were considerable. Ensuring a steady supply of food, particularly during harsh winters, was a major concern. Owners often cultivated specific crops like peas or vetch specifically for their birds, or purchased large quantities of grain. This required careful planning and resource management, a testament to the effort invested in these valuable assets. You observe a dovecot keeper meticulously measuring out grain, ensuring each bird receives its share. It's a finely tuned operation, like running a small, feathered factory. "Waste not, want not," he advises a young apprentice. A quirky historical detail you learn about is the use of pigeon nests, or rather, the materials within them, in certain medieval crafts. The fine down and feathers shed by pigeons were sometimes collected for stuffing pillows, quilting, or even as decorative elements in clothing. While not a primary industry, it was another small way in which every part of the pigeon and its environment was utilized. You see a seamstress carefully sorting through a pile of soft pigeon down, her fingers deftly separating the delicate fibers. It's a quiet testament to the resourcefulness of the age. Historians still debate the extent to which pigeons were used in early forms of agricultural experimentation. Could farmers have observed the effects of different guano applications on various crops, or even tracked the spread of blight or pests via changes in pigeon feeding patterns? While formal scientific methods were centuries away, practical observation and experimentation were undoubtedly part of medieval farming, and pigeons, as a constant presence, might have offered subtle clues. You imagine a shrewd farmer noting that where the pigeons foraged more, the crops seemed to grow better, leading to an intuitive understanding of fertilizer. The legal disputes surrounding pigeon ownership could be remarkably complex. Beyond the droit de Colombier, there were arguments over birds straying from their dovecotes, conflicts over shared foraging grounds, and even accusations of pigeon theft. These cases would be brought before local lords or communal courts, highlighting the importance of pigeons in everyday life and the need for clear regulations governing their ownership and behavior. You hear a heated argument in the village square, two neighbors bickering over a pigeon that allegedly stole grain from one's field. "My pigeon would never," one exclaims indignant. The role of pigeons in medieval diplomacy, while less dramatic than warfare, was nevertheless significant. Royal courts and powerful lords would exchange messages via pigeons, particularly when dealing with matters of state that required discretion or speed. This allowed for confidential communication that was less susceptible to interception by human spies or rival powers. You picture a royal scribe carefully penning a diplomatic letter, sealing it, and entrusting it to a trusted pigeon, hoping its flight would ensure peace, or at least timely negotiations. It's a silent, feathered ambassador. "May this bird carry our intent?" Swiftly and unseen, the scribe murmurs. The sensory details of a medieval dovecote were unique. The constant cooing, the flutter of wings, the pungent aroma of guano, and the warmth radiating from hundreds of bird bodies. It was a living, breathing environment. You step into a meticulously maintained dovecote, the air thick with the scent of straw and birds, the soft murmur of cooing a comforting drone. The light filters in through small openings, illuminating dust motes dancing in the air, creating a magical, almost ethereal atmosphere. It's a world apart from the muddy streets outside, a sanctuary for these valuable creatures. You feel a sudden sense of peace, a quiet appreciation for the ingenuity of the people who built and maintained these feathered cities. It's surprisingly cozy in here. You think, stifling a sneeze. You've witnessed the practical, the symbolic, and the emotional aspects of medieval pigeons. Now, your attention turns to the broader implications of their widespread presence, particularly in terms of infrastructure and social control. Imagine the sheer logistics involved in managing large-scale pigeon populations across an entire kingdom. This wasn't just about individual dovecotes. It was about a network, a living, breathing communication system that spanned vast territories. This required a level of organization and coordination that speaks to the sophistication of medieval administration, even without modern technology. You envision a map, crisscrossed with invisible pigeon flight paths, connecting castles, monasteries, and market towns like invisible threads of information. The training methods for homing pigeons could be quite rigorous, involving stages of increasing distance and exposure to different environments. Young birds, or squeakers, would often be taken on short flights around their home dovecote, gradually increasing the distance as they matured. This systematic approach ensured that the birds developed strong homing instincts and the endurance for longer journeys. You watch a trainer patiently releasing a young bird a short distance from its dovecote, encouraging it to return with soft whistles and calls. It's a delicate balance of nurture and conditioning. "Go on, little one, find your way home," he urges. A quirky historical fact you encounter is the use of pigeon blood in certain medieval inks. While not a primary ingredient, some recipes for specialized inks, particularly those used for important documents or illuminated manuscripts, might have included small quantities of animal blood, including pigeon blood, believed to add vibrancy or permanence to the pigment. It's a curious detail, hinting at the alchemical approaches to craftsmanship in the era. You imagine a scribe meticulously grinding pigments, perhaps adding a drop of pigeon blood for that extra touch of medieval magic. "Just a touch of the pigeon spirit, for a truly lasting decree," he might say. Historians still debate the precise economic value of pigeon meat compared to other forms of protein in the medieval diet. While certainly a valuable source, especially during lean times, was it a staple for all social classes or primarily a luxury? The answer likely varied by region, season, and social status, but the debate highlights the complexity of reconstructing medieval dietary habits. You ponder the average medieval dinner plate, wondering how often pigeon pie graced the table of a peasant versus a lord. The regulatory aspects of pigeon keeping also reveal a surprising level of detail. Beyond ownership rights, there were often local ordinances governing the construction of dovecotes, the disposal of guano, and even measures to prevent the spread of disease. These regulations were designed to manage the practical challenges of coexisting with large numbers of birds in close proximity to human settlements. You hear a town crier announcing a new decree regarding pigeon lofts, much to the exasperation of some residents. "Another tax on our feathers!" someone grumbles. The use of carrier pigeons was not always successful. Predators like hawks and falcons, bad weather, disorientation, or even exhaustion could lead to birds being lost or failing to deliver their messages. This inherent unreliability meant that important messages were often sent in duplicate or triplicate, sometimes by different routes, to increase the chances of at least one reaching its destination. This redundancy was a crucial aspect of medieval information security. You picture a frustrated lord pacing his chambers, awaiting a crucial message that never arrived, a victim of nature's indifference to human affairs. It's a humbling reminder of the limitations of medieval technology. The relationship between pigeons and specific agricultural cycles was also a constant. Pigeons would naturally be drawn to newly sown fields for seeds, or to ripe grain fields for easy foraging. This meant that their presence was often correlated with specific times of the year, becoming a familiar part of the seasonal rhythm of rural life. You see a flock of pigeons settling on a recently ploughed field. They're hungry, pecking a natural part of the agricultural landscape. It's a recurring scene, a testament to the enduring relationship between humans, birds, and the land they shared. The pigeons are out, the harvest nears, an old farmer notes, a slight sigh of resignation in his voice. Your journey continues, and you find yourself reflecting on the incredible resilience and adaptability of the medieval pigeon. It wasn't just a tool, it was a living, breathing part of the ecosystem that medieval society had, sometimes unwittingly, created around itself. Consider the impact of large pigeon populations on the landscape itself. Over centuries, the constant foraging of pigeons, particularly for seeds and grains, would have had a subtle but significant effect on local flora. While hard to quantify, this continuous pressure from thousands of birds contributed to shaping the agricultural and wild landscapes of the era. You envision vast fields, not just shaped by human hands, but also by the cumulative pecking and flight of generations of pigeons. The symbolic role of the pigeon extended into heraldry and coats of arms. Noble families sometimes incorporated pigeons or doves into their emblems, signifying attributes like peace, loyalty, or swiftness in communication. This elevated the bird beyond mere utility, placing it within the very visual identity of power and lineage. You observe a stained glass window in a lord's chapel, depicting a family crest with a gracefully flying pigeon, a silent statement of their values and heritage. A truly noble bird, you muse. A quirky tidbit you learn about is the medieval equivalent of pigeon postboxes. While most pigeons returned directly to their dovecote, some specialized systems might have involved intermediate way stations or relay points, particularly for very long distances or treacherous routes. These would have been secure locations where fresh birds could be swapped in, or where messages could be transcribed and forwarded. It speaks to a nascent understanding of logistical networks, even if rudimentary. You imagine a small, fortified hut along a trade route, its sole purpose to serve as a pigeon relay station, a vital node in the medieval information superhighway. Historians still debate the specific genetic lines and breeding practices employed by medieval pigeon keepers. Was there an intentional focus on creating distinct breeds as we understand them today? Or was it more about maintaining general characteristics like homing ability and plumpness? The lack of detailed breeding records makes it difficult to ascertain the full extent of medieval pigeon genetics, leaving much to scholarly interpretation. You ponder the unknown genetic history of countless medieval pigeons, their lineages lost to time, their descendants still cooing on city streets today. The impact of climate on pigeon populations was also a constant factor. Severe winters, prolonged droughts, or periods of excessive rain could decimate flocks, impacting food supplies and communication capabilities. Medieval people would have observed these fluctuations and understood the vulnerability of their feathered assets to the whims of nature. You see a somber dovecote keeper assessing his diminished flock after a particularly brutal winter. The silence in the dovecote a stark contrast to its usual lively chatter. Many good birds lost, he sighs, his voice heavy with regret. The cultural narratives surrounding pigeons were diverse. While often seen positively, there were also tales of pigeons as omens, harbingers of good or ill fortune. A sudden, unexplained flight of pigeons, or their unusual behavior, could be interpreted as a sign from the heavens, influencing decisions or sparking fear. This added a layer of mysticism to their everyday presence, transforming them from simple birds into potential conduits of divine will. You hear whispers of a flock of pigeons abandoning a village just before a devastating fire, cementing their reputation as prophetic creatures. They knew, a villager insists, they always know. The sheer soundscape of a medieval settlement would have been fundamentally shaped by pigeons. The constant cooing, the sudden flutter of wings, the murmur of hundreds of birds settling, these sounds would have been woven into the fabric of daily life, a constant background hum that modern ears can only imagine. You close your eyes, trying to conjure the acoustic environment of a medieval town, the human chatter, the animal sounds, and above all the pervasive, comforting sound of pigeons. It's a vibrant, noisy tapestry, and the pigeons are a significant thread within it. You realize that a medieval person would likely find the quietness of a modern city unnerving, missing the natural, lively sounds of their world. As you delve deeper, you begin to grasp the nuances of pigeon economics in the medieval world, extending beyond just food and communication. Consider the market for live pigeons themselves. Beyond the squabs destined for the pot, there was a constant demand for breeding pairs, particularly those from proven lineages, known for their homing ability or size. This created a specialized market, driven by the desire for improved stock and the maintenance of established dovercoats. You witness a shrewd bargain being struck between two pigeon fanciers, discussing the virtues of a particular hen and her potential offspring, their voices animated with passion. "She throws excellent flyers, I tell you!" one asserts. The methods of protecting dovecotes from human theft were also surprisingly robust. Given the value of pigeons and guano, dovecotes were often locked, guarded, or even integrated into defensive structures to prevent poaching. Night watches might be employed, or specialized traps set for would-be thieves. This highlights the recognition of pigeons as valuable property, worth defending with considerable effort. You see a sturdy wooden door, heavily barred, guarding the entrance to a dovercote, a clear sign of the treasures within. "Nobody gets in here without a fight," you imagine the guard thinking. A quirky historical fact you discover is the occasional use of pigeons in medieval art as symbols of a romantic message or a secret rendezvous. While less common than their religious symbolism, you sometimes find depictions of pigeons carrying tiny love letters or flying between separated lovers. This reflects a more whimsical, tender side of their perceived role, tapping into their ability to connect individuals across distances. You spot a small illustration in a manuscript depicting a woman releasing a pigeon towards a distant castle, a heart etched on its tiny scroll. It's a subtle touch, but one that speaks of hidden passions. Historians still debate the specific types of materials used for pigeon messages. While parchment or thin vellum was common, was lead, tin, or even tightly rolled fabric sometimes employed for added security or weather resistance. The choice of material would have depended on the message's importance, the expected journey, and the available resources, adding another layer of complexity to the study of medieval communication. You imagine the painstaking process of writing on such tiny surfaces, the delicate touch required to not damage the fragile scroll. The economic impact of pigeon guano production on agriculture was substantial. The consistent availability of this rich fertilizer, particularly in regions with dense dovercote populations, would have significantly boosted crop yields and soil fertility. This had a cascading effect, supporting larger populations and fostering greater agricultural stability. You see fields that appear noticeably greener and lusher than others, directly attributable to the diligent application of pigeon droppings. It's a silent, invisible force, but one that underpins much of the medieval food supply. That's good earth. That is, a farmer proudly states, gesturing to his flourishing crops. The legal and social implications of a pigeon trespass were fascinating. If a lord's pigeon flew onto a peasant's land and consumed their crops, the peasant had little recourse. This imbalance of power, enshrined in the Droit de Columbia, was a constant source of friction. It fostered a sense of injustice and contributed to the narrative of aristocratic privilege. You hear a peasant muttering darkly about the Lord's winged tax collectors, a bitter jest that perfectly encapsulates their resentment. It's a reminder of the many small indignities that defined the lives of the lower classes. The very concept of a pigeon fancier in the medieval period, though not formalized as a club, suggests an early form of hobby and specialized interest. Individuals who truly loved and understood pigeons beyond their mere utility would have existed. They would have dedicated time and resources to breeding and caring for their birds, perhaps participating in informal races or simply admiring their beauty. This speaks to a universal human impulse to connect with and appreciate the natural world, even in times of extreme pragmatism. You observe an older man, his eyes sparkling with affection, gently holding a particularly beautiful pigeon, admiring its iridescent plumage. "She's a marvel," he whispers, "a true gift." As you continue to immerse yourself in the medieval soundscape, the cooing of pigeons is a constant, almost hypnotic hum. You start to understand how deeply interwoven these birds were with the very fabric of medieval life, not just as tools, but as an integral part of the sensory environment. Consider their role in signaling, while bells and horns were primary. The mass flight of a large flock of pigeons, or their sudden agitated cooing, could serve as a subtle indicator of unusual activity, whether it was an approaching visitor, a fire, or even a raiding party. It was an organic alarm system, albeit an imperfect one. You hear a sudden flurry of wings from a nearby dovecote, and you instinctively look around, wondering what disturbed them. The birds are in a fuss. Someone remarks, "Something's up." The meticulous record-keeping associated with dovecotes, particularly on larger estates, offers a fascinating glimpse into medieval administration. Lords and their stewards would often keep detailed ledgers of pigeon populations, egg production, guano yields, and even the success rate of messenger pigeons. This data was crucial for managing resources, assessing productivity, and planning for the future. You imagine a scribe, quill in hand, diligently noting down the numbers in a dimly lit chamber, the flickering candlelight casting long shadows on the parchment. It's a quiet testament to the bureaucratic precision of the era. A quirky historical detail you stumble upon involves the use of pigeon nests themselves. While the guano was valuable, the nesting materials, twigs, straw, and other debris, were occasionally collected and used as kindling or even for insulation in poorer homes. It speaks to a profound resourcefulness where nothing went to waste, and even the detritus of pigeon life found a purpose. You see a child carefully collecting discarded nest material from the base of a dovecote, a small contribution to the family's warmth. Historians still debate the specific genetic traits that medieval breeders prioritized in their pigeons. Was it purely homing ability? Or was there an emphasis on larger, meatier birds? Did certain regions develop distinct breeds with particular characteristics? The limited documentation makes it challenging to draw firm conclusions, leading to ongoing scholarly discussion about the true diversity of medieval pigeon types. You ponder the possibility of lost medieval pigeon breeds, their unique attributes now a mere footnote in the annals of history. The communal aspect of pigeon keeping, particularly in smaller villages, fostered a sense of shared responsibility and local knowledge. While grand dovecotes were privately owned, the informal exchange of knowledge and perhaps even occasional shared resources for smaller flocks would have been common. This created a micro-community around the birds, a shared interest that transcended social barriers. You picture neighbors exchanging advice on feeding mixes or remedies for ailing birds, a quiet camaraderie forged over shared feathered friends. My grandmother always said a bit of thyme in their water keeps the sniffles away. The vulnerability of pigeons to disease outbreaks was a constant threat to their utility. A widespread illness within a dovercote could decimate a valuable flock, leading to losses of food, guano, and critical communication channels. Medieval people, lacking modern veterinary science, would have relied on folk remedies, isolation, and ultimately, prayer in the face of such epidemics. You see a dovercote keeper, his face etched with worry, performing a ritual blessing over his birds, hoping to ward off an unseen blight. It's a reminder of the pervasive anxieties of the era. "May the saints protect these good birds," he murmurs. The impact of pigeon guano on the medieval urban landscape is also a fascinating aspect. The sheer volume of droppings, particularly in cities where dovercotes were common, would have been a significant presence. While some was collected for fertilizer, much would have accumulated on streets, buildings, and statues, contributing to the distinctive smells and visual character of medieval towns. You walk through a narrow alleyway, the lingering scent of guano a constant reminder of the birds perched high above. It's an olfactory signature of the medieval world, one that might not be in your favorite scented candle. Ah, the aroma of prosperity, you think, with a wry smile. You continue to absorb the layers of medieval life, and the pigeon's role feels less like a mere footnote and more like a pervasive influence. You begin to appreciate the very infrastructure that supported this feathered workforce. Consider the specialized knowledge required to build and maintain a dovercote. It wasn't just about putting up a shed. It involved understanding ventilation, predator control, and creating the ideal nesting environment for hundreds of birds. This was a skilled trade, passed down through generations, often incorporating local materials and architectural styles. You observe a master mason meticulously crafting nesting boxes within a new dovercote, his movements precise and practiced. Every detail designed for pigeon comfort and productivity. "A happy pigeon is a productive pigeon," he declares, with a twinkle in his eye. The symbolic value of pigeons also extended into medieval literature and poetry. They were often used as metaphors for love, peace, purity, and even the fleeting nature of life. Poets would invoke their image to convey emotion or to illustrate moral lessons. This literary presence speaks to their deep cultural resonance, far beyond their practical applications. You hear a minstrel strumming his lute, singing a lament about a lost love, comparing his heart to a lost pigeon, forever searching for its mate. It's a sweet, melancholic tune, underscoring the universal themes the bird could embody. A quirky tidbit you learn about is the medieval practice of feeding pigeons specific herbs or substances, sometimes in the belief that it would enhance their homing ability or their health. While many of these practices were based on superstition rather than science, they reflect a genuine desire to maximize the bird's potential. You see a dovercote keeper sprinkling a mysterious powder into the pigeon's feed, muttering incantations under his breath. It's a blend of pragmatism and magical thinking, characteristic of the era. "A bit of moon dust for extra speed," he jokes, winking. Historians still debate the extent of pigeon trafficking and smuggling in the medieval period. Given their value, particularly for communication, it's plausible that birds were sometimes stolen or illicitly traded across borders or between rival factions. This would have been a high-stakes endeavor, with severe penalties if caught, but the potential rewards could have been substantial. You imagine a shadowy figure slipping a cage of valuable pigeons through a secret gate under the cover of darkness, a tiny feathered black market in action. The strategic placement of dovercotes within the defensive perimeters of castles suggests a deliberate integration into military planning. Not only did they provide communication during sieges, but their very presence, with constant comings and goings, might have offered some level of natural observation, alerting guards to unusual activity. It was a multifunctional asset, combining food, communication, and a rudimentary form of surveillance. You stand on a castle battlement, looking down at a busy dovercote below. realizing how intimately connected it was to the castle's overall defense. "They see more than the watchman sometimes," a guard mutters. The economic infrastructure surrounding Pigeon keeping extended to the market for pigeon eggs. While not as large as chicken eggs, pigeon eggs were a valuable protein source, particularly for the wealthy. They would have been collected regularly from dovecotes and sold in markets, adding another revenue stream for dovecote owners. You see a basket of tiny, speckled pigeon eggs nestled amongst chicken eggs in a market stall, a testament to their diverse culinary applications. "Fresh from the dovecote, madam, quite delicate," the vendor announces. The sheer volume of individual nesting holes within some of the grander dovecotes is astounding. Imagine hundreds, even thousands, of meticulously crafted cubbyholes, each one a potential home for a breeding pair. This level of architectural detail and planning speaks to the immense value placed on maximizing pigeon productivity. It's a testament to the scale of pigeon operations in the medieval world, far beyond what many modern observers might envision. You peer into a particularly large dovecote, its interior a dizzying honeycomb of nesting cavities, a truly remarkable feat of medieval engineering. It makes you feel tiny, surrounded by so many little feathered homes. You delve deeper into the socio-economic layers of medieval pigeon keeping, realizing that it wasn't a monolithic practice, but one that varied greatly by region and social standing. Consider the local ordinances that might have regulated pigeon keeping in urban areas, while lords had grand dovecotes. Urban dwellers might have been restricted in the number of pigeons they could keep, or where their coops could be located, due to concerns about hygiene, noise, or damage to property. This showcases the tension between individual liberty and communal well-being in medieval towns. You overhear a town council meeting discussing new regulations on pigeon roosts, the debate heated and passionate. "Their droppings defile our market stalls," one merchant exclaimed. The symbolic association of pigeons with peace is a recurring motif across cultures and centuries, and it was certainly present in the medieval period. After a major conflict or the signing of a peace treaty, the release of white doves or pigeons could have been a symbolic gesture, a visual representation of reconciliation and hope. This elevated the bird beyond its practical uses, imbuing it with profound political and social meaning. You picture a procession celebrating a newly signed peace treaty, white pigeons fluttering into the sky, carrying the hopes of a wary populace. It's a beautiful, timeless image. A quirky tidbit you uncover is the medieval use of pigeon manure, not just as fertilizer, but in the tanning process for leather. The uric acid in pigeon droppings was found to be effective in breaking down and softening animal hides, making them more pliable and easier to work with. This surprising application highlights the ingenious ways medieval artisans utilized every available resource. You see a tanner, his hands stained and smelling strongly of hides, mixing pigeon guano into a vat, the pungent aroma a testament to its effectiveness. A secret ingredient, this is, he mutters, winking. Historians still debate the specific genetic impact of medieval pigeon breeding on modern pigeon varieties. While some ancient bloodlines may have persisted, the continuous intermingling with wild populations and the sheer passage of time make it difficult to trace direct lineages. This leaves a fascinating mystery about the evolutionary journey of the domesticated pigeon and its connection to its medieval ancestors. You ponder the untold stories held within the DNA of today's pigeons, silent echoes of their medieval past. The strategic denial of pigeons to an enemy during wartime was also a significant tactic, if a besieged castle or town relied on pigeons for communication. Intercepting or destroying their dovecotes could severely cripple their ability to send or receive messages, effectively isolating them. This made dovecotes a legitimate target in military campaigns, highlighting their critical importance. You imagine a raiding party specifically targeting a dovecote, the ensuing chaos and the desperate attempts to protect the valuable birds. It's a grim reminder of the high stakes involved. "Burn the Dovercoat," a commander shouts, his voice harsh. The role of pigeons in medieval trade was not limited to carrying messages. They were also sometimes used as indicators of the health and abundance of specific regions. A merchant arriving in a new town might observe the number and condition of the local pigeon population as an informal indicator of the area's prosperity and agricultural productivity. It was a living, breathing barometer of the local economy. You see a shrewd merchant discreetly observing the pigeon flocks as he enters a new market town, assessing the unspoken clues they provide about the local economy. Good birds, good harvest, he thinks, his mind already calculating profits. The sheer adaptability of the rock dove, the ancestor of most medieval pigeons, is truly remarkable. These birds thrived in a wide range of environments, from coastal cliffs to urban centers, making them ideally suited for domestication and widespread adoption across medieval Europe. Their natural instincts and robust nature allowed them to flourish even in challenging conditions, a testament to their evolutionary success. You watch a wild rock dove soaring effortlessly above a craggy cliff face, a stark contrast to its domesticated cousins, yet sharing the same fundamental resilience. It's a symbol of untamed spirit, even in a world increasingly shaped by human hands. You are deep into the rhythm of medieval life now, and the presence of pigeons feels as natural as the cobblestones beneath your feet. You start to consider the very mechanics of message delivery. Imagine the small, intricate scrolls, often made of parchment or vellum, carefully rolled and tied with silk thread to the pigeon's leg. The writing would have been tiny, compressed, and sometimes coded, requiring specialized skills to both pen and decipher. It was a miniaturized art form, essential for compacting vital information onto a bird's leg. You watch a scribe, his hand remarkably steady, writing minute script onto a delicate piece of parchment, his breath held in concentration. Every word must count, he reminds himself. The psychological impact of receiving a pigeon message, particularly during times of war or crisis, cannot be overstated. The sudden arrival of a bird from a distant, perhaps besieged, location would have been a moment of intense anticipation and relief, or profound despair. It was a tangible link to the outside world, a symbol of hope or a bearer of devastating news. You picture a group of wary soldiers, their eyes fixed on the sky, anxiously awaiting a messenger pigeon, their fates hanging in the balance of its flight. Is it good news or bad? One whispers, his voice strained. A quirky historical tidbit you uncover relates to the use of pigeon feathers in certain medieval quill pens. While goose feathers were the primary choice, the smaller, finer feathers from pigeons might have been used for delicate work, such as illustrating manuscripts or writing very small script. This was a testament to the resourcefulness of medieval scribes and artisans, utilizing every available resource for their craft. You see a skilled illuminator carefully selecting a pigeon feather, its fine tip perfect for adding intricate details to a gilded initial. For the finest lines, he explains, only the best will do. Historians still debate the extent to which medieval pigeon keepers understood the concept of selective breeding. While they clearly chose birds for specific traits like homing ability or size, did they grasp the underlying principles of heredity in a scientific sense? Or was it more an intuitive, trial and error process? The answer likely lies somewhere in between, a blend of pragmatic observation and inherited knowledge. You ponder the unspoken wisdom of generations of pigeon breeders, their unwritten science guiding their choices. The economic infrastructure surrounding pigeon keeping extended to the trade in specialized pigeon equipment. This included Dovercoat doors, nesting boxes, feed troughs, and even rudimentary pigeon traps for catching wild birds or retrieving lost ones. While much would have been crafted locally, Some items might have been produced by specialized artisans, contributing to a small but vital industry. You see a craftsman meticulously carving a series of wooden nesting boxes, his tools worn smooth by years of use. Each one a perfect home, he proudly states. The sheer volume of pigeon droppings, even beyond its use as fertilizer, would have presented a significant challenge for medieval urban sanitation. While some was collected, much would have simply accumulated, contributing to the overall uncleanliness of medieval towns. This highlights the constant battle against waste and disease in an era without modern waste management systems. You wrinkle your nose as you pass a particularly pungent area. The lingering scent of pigeon guano, a potent reminder of the challenges of medieval hygiene. Not exactly a rose garden, you think with a shudder. The cultural impact of pigeons extended to their occasional appearance in riddles and folk puzzles. Their distinctive features, behaviors, and uses made them popular subjects for wordplay and intellectual challenges, a small form of medieval amusement. You hear a group of children gathered in a courtyard, giggling as they try to solve a riddle about a bird that flies without wings and carries messages without speaking. It's a simple game, but one that reflects the pigeon's pervasive presence in their world. What has no mouth but tells great tales? A child asks, his eyes twinkling. You are now so attuned to the rhythm of medieval life that the sudden flutter of a pigeon's wings barely registers as an interruption, more like a natural pulse in the air. You begin to contemplate the sheer scale of the pigeon network. Imagine a kingdom-wide system, particularly in times of war or political instability, where rapid communication was paramount. This wasn't just individual messages. It was a complex web of information, allowing rulers to coordinate armies, receive intelligence from distant provinces, and maintain control over their territories. It was the medieval equivalent of a real-time command and control center, powered by feathers and instinct. You envision a war room, maps spread out, and a series of pigeon cages awaiting their next mission, each bird a potential game changer. The training of messenger pigeons sometimes involved a period of starving them slightly before release, encouraging them to fly directly and quickly back to their dovercote where food awaited. While this sounds harsh, it was a practical method to enhance their homing drive and ensure swift delivery. It highlights the pragmatic, often unsentimental, approach to animal husbandry in the medieval period. You observe a dovercote keeper withholding a portion of the usual feed, his gaze firm but not unkind. A bit of hunger makes them fly true, he explains. A quirky historical tidbit you uncover is the occasional use of pigeon decoys, or lures, in hunting practices. Hunters might use trained pigeons to attract wild hawks or falcons, either for capture and training as raptors, or as a means of eliminating predators from specific areas. It's a fascinating, if somewhat cruel, example of utilizing one bird to catch another, showcasing the intricate food chains and human manipulations within the medieval ecosystem. You see a hunter setting out a trained pigeon, its movements designed to attract the attention of a circling hawk, a silent drama unfolding in the sky. Historians still debate the specific routes and distances that medieval messenger pigeons could reliably cover, while anecdotal evidence suggests impressive long-distance flights. The true limitations would have been dependent on factors like weather, terrain, and the individual bird's training and endurance. Reconstructing these medieval flight paths is a complex challenge, relying on fragmentary records and informed speculation. You ponder the extraordinary journeys undertaken by these tiny aviators, their internal compass guiding them across unfamiliar landscapes. The legal enforcement of droit Columbia was a significant aspect of medieval law, often leading to fines, confiscation of property, or even physical punishment for commoners caught poaching or infringing on a lord's pigeon rights. This legal framework underscored the importance of pigeon ownership as a symbol of power and privilege, and the lengths to which it was protected. You hear a solemn judge delivering a stern sentence to a peasant caught snaring pigeons, the severity of the punishment reflecting the value placed on the Lord's property. "Let this be a warning to all who covet what is not theirs," the judge intones. The use of specific markings or rings on pigeons for identification purposes became increasingly sophisticated over time. This wasn't just for ownership. It could also indicate lineage, breeding status, or even the success rate of a messenger bird. This rudimentary form of tracking and data collection speaks to a desire for efficiency and accountability in managing valuable assets. You observe a dovecote keeper meticulously checking the rings on a returning pigeon, noting its number in a ledger, a medieval version of a barcode scanner. Number 73, back on schedule, he grumbles, a flicker of satisfaction in his eyes. The very concept of a pigeon tower, or a freestanding dovecote, was a unique architectural contribution of the medieval period, particularly in regions like France and England. These structures were specifically designed to house large numbers of pigeons, often featuring intricate internal arrangements of nesting boxes and access points for cleaning and harvesting. They were not just utilitarian buildings, but often aesthetically pleasing additions to the landscape, a symbol of the owner's status and the pigeon's importance. You stand before a magnificent stone dovecote, its conical roof reaching towards the sky, a silent monument to the enduring legacy of the medieval pigeon. It feels ancient, yet vibrantly alive with the echoes of its past feathered inhabitants. You are practically a medieval pigeon expert by now, accustomed to the subtle rhythms of their cooing and the swift arc of their flight. You begin to appreciate the often overlooked symbiotic relationship between medieval humans and these birds. Beyond just the obvious benefits, pigeons also played a role in minor pest control. While they consumed valuable grain, they also fed on insects and larvae, particularly around the dovecotes and fields. It was a trade-off, a natural balance in an ecosystem where every creature had a part to play. You observe a flock of pigeons diligently pecking at the ground, occasionally snatching up a beetle, a tiny, feathered clean-up crew at work. Every little bit helps, a farmer remarks, watching them. The economic and social value of pigeons extended to specific regions, becoming known for their superior breeding stock. Certain areas might have developed a reputation for producing faster homing pigeons or larger, more succulent birds for consumption. This would have led to a regional specialization in pigeon husbandry, with birds being traded across distances for their desirable traits. You hear tales of famous pigeon markets, bustling with buyers seeking the legendary Normandy flyers or the English giants. It was a primitive form of brand recognition based on avian excellence. A quirky historical tidbit you uncover relates to the use of pigeon poultices in folk medicine. While likely ineffective by modern standards, some medieval healers might have applied warm pigeon droppings or even a whole pigeon to soothe swelling, reduce inflammation, or draw out infection. It speaks to a desperate search for remedies in an age of limited medical understanding, where every part of an animal was considered for its potential healing properties. You imagine a medieval patient grimacing as a warm pigeon poultice is applied, hoping for relief. "It's supposed to be good for the humors," a healer insists. Historians still debate the extent to which medieval pigeon diseases spread to other domesticated animals or even human populations. While direct evidence is scarce, the close proximity of pigeons to livestock and people suggests a potential pathway for zoonotic diseases. The lack of detailed medical records makes it challenging to pinpoint specific outbreaks, leaving this a fascinating area of historical epidemiological speculation. You ponder the unseen microbial world, silently shaping the lives and deaths of medieval people and their animals. The communal practice of pigeon watches during harvest season was also a significant aspect of rural life. Peasants would often take turns guarding fields from flocks of hungry pigeons, employing scarecrows, loud noises, or even rudimentary nets to protect their precious crops. This collective effort highlights the constant tension between the lord's pigeons and the peasant's livelihood. You see a young boy, armed with a rattle, dutifully standing guard in a field, shooing away persistent pigeons with loud shouts. "Begone, winged menace!" he yells. The sheer volume of pigeon communication during major events, such as crusades or significant battles, must have been immense. Imagine the constant flurry of birds flying to and from the front lines, carrying dispatches, intelligence, and urgent pleas for reinforcements. It was a vital communication lifeline, connecting distant armies and commanders, shaping the course of history one feathered message at a time. You picture a battlefield encampment, a temporary pigeon loft bustling with activity, a constant stream of birds taking flight, their silent journeys echoing the turmoil below. "Send word to the king immediately!" a wary general commands. The unique scent of a medieval dovercoat, a blend of pigeon guano, feathers, and straw, would have been a distinctive olfactory signature of the era. It was a smell of productivity and life, albeit a pungent one, often permeating the surrounding areas. This pervasive aroma would have been as familiar to a medieval person as the scent of baking bread or wood smoke. You take a deep breath, trying to imagine the full sensory experience of a medieval town, realizing how much of it would have been defined by the presence of these industrious birds. It's a smell that might stick with you long after you leave this historical immersion. As you approach the end of your medieval journey, the pigeon's presence is no longer just observed. It's almost felt, an enduring pulse within the historical narrative. You consider the role of pigeons in medieval symbolism beyond heraldry and religious iconography. They were often used as symbols of vigilance and watchfulness, particularly in military contexts. A constant stream of messenger pigeons indicated an active and alert command, reassuring allies and perhaps unnerving enemies. It was a silent declaration of operational readiness. You picture a castle banner, emblazoned with a watchful pigeon, a subtle message of its lord's preparedness. "Our eyes are everywhere," the symbol whispers. The breeding of specific color variations in pigeons, purely for aesthetic enjoyment, also grew in popularity among the wealthy. While utility remained paramount for most, the desire for unusual or beautiful plumage became a form of conspicuous consumption, a display of wealth and refined taste. This was the genesis of modern pigeon fancying, driven by a purely visual appreciation. You observe a noblewoman's prized white fantail pigeon, its tail feathers fanned out like a delicate lace fan, a living piece of art. It's a testament to the pursuit of beauty even in a pragmatic age. "Isn't she exquisite, the lady purrs?" A quirky historical tidbit you uncover involves the use of pigeon bells or whistles. While not universally common, some accounts suggest that small bells or whistles were occasionally attached to messenger pigeons, particularly those carrying urgent or celebratory messages. This would have alerted the recipient to the bird's arrival, adding an auditory flourish to the delivery. You imagine the faint tinkling of a tiny bell, announcing a pigeon's approach, a delightful, almost magical sound cutting through the medieval din. "Hark! A message from afar!" you might exclaim. Historians still debate the specific methods used to protect pigeons from predators during long-distance flights. While natural instincts and high-altitude flight offered some protection, deliberate tactics like releasing birds in groups, or at specific times of day, might have been employed. The constant threat from falcons and other raptors was a significant challenge, making every successful message delivery a small triumph against the odds. You ponder the dangers faced by these tiny aviators, their journeys fraught with peril, every flight a gamble. The moral and ethical considerations of pigeon keeping, though not articulated in modern terms, were implicitly understood. while pigeons provided sustenance and communication. Their constant foraging on peasant crops created a tension. The right of the lord to keep pigeons was balanced, however imperfectly, against the right of the peasant to protect their livelihood. These were the unspoken ethical dilemmas of the medieval agrarian society. You hear a village priest in a sermon urging compassion for all creatures, perhaps a subtle nod to the plight of the peasant's crops versus the lord's birds. The specialized architecture of dovecotes, with their complex internal structures, often included features designed to protect the birds from extreme weather. Thick walls, sheltered entrances, and well-insulated nesting boxes ensured the pigeons' survival through harsh winters and scorching summers. This level of environmental control speaks to the care and investment put into these valuable feathered assets. You step into a dovecote on a particularly cold day, feeling the surprising warmth radiating from the hundreds of birds huddled within its protective walls. It's a carefully engineered microclimate, a cozy home even for a bird, you think. The transition from a purely wild pigeon population to one that was extensively domesticated, particularly in the later medieval period, represents a significant step in human-animal relations. It demonstrates a growing understanding of animal husbandry, selective breeding, and the systematic utilization of natural resources. This shift laid some of the groundwork for later agricultural and scientific advancements. You reflect on the transformation of the humble rock dove from a wild bird to an indispensable part of medieval civilization, a silent partner in human progress, its journey a testament to the enduring bond between humans and the animals they choose to live with. You are now at the very end of your long journey through the medieval world, and the final echoes of pigeon cooing still linger in your ears. You consider the pigeon's enduring legacy, a silent testament to its profound impact on an era long past. Imagine the collective memory of generations, intertwined with the familiar sight and sound of pigeons. They were a constant presence, a living backdrop to births, deaths, triumphs, and defeats. Their legacy is not just in historical records, but in the very cultural fabric of the age. You close your eyes, and in your mind's eye, you see flocks of pigeons soaring over medieval castles, carrying their silent burdens of history. The very act of releasing a pigeon could be a profound gesture, in moments of celebration, mourning, or solemn oaths. The flight of a pigeon might have been incorporated into ceremonies, adding a symbolic flourish. It was a living metaphor for hopes taking flight or spirits ascending. This elevates the bird beyond its practical uses into the realm of ritual and collective expression. You envision a medieval funeral, and as the coffin is lowered, a single white pigeon is released, its flight a silent prayer for the departed soul. It's a timeless act of remembrance. A quirky historical tidbit you uncover is the medieval use of pigeon messengers in what might be called early forms of animal tracking or observation for scientific, or perhaps just curious purposes. While not systematic, some individuals might have used trained pigeons to follow the movements of other animals, or to observe distant landscapes, though evidence is scarce. It's a fascinating glimpse into a nascent curiosity about the natural world, albeit through a highly unconventional method. You imagine a medieval scholar squinting through a rudimentary spyglass, attempting to track a pigeon flying over a distant forest, seeking new insights into nature's secrets. What mysteries does this little bird observe? He ponders. Historians still debate the precise techniques used by medieval pigeon keepers to protect their birds from airborne predators. While large flocks offered some safety in numbers, and dovecotes provided shelter, how did they actively deter birds of prey during flight? Were there specific calls, deterrents, or even rudimentary avian scarecrows? The details remain largely speculative, adding to the mystique of their survival in a dangerous world. You ponder the unseen battles played out in the skies above medieval Europe, tiny feathered lives constantly at risk, the social tensions caused by pigeons were not always passive. There are records of direct peasant rebellions or local disputes where the destruction of a lord's dovecote was a symbolic act of defiance, a direct attack on his privilege and wealth. This underscores the deep resentment that could fester over seemingly minor issues like pigeon rights, highlighting their role as a microcosm of broader social conflict. You hear the shouts of an angry mob, their anger fueled by years of perceived injustice, as they storm a dovecote, its destruction a powerful statement of their grievance. The artistic representations of pigeons in medieval illuminated manuscripts, tapestries, and sculptures often varied in their realism. While some depictions were highly accurate, others were stylized or allegorical, reflecting artistic conventions and the specific symbolic message being conveyed. This diversity in representation speaks to the varied ways medieval people perceived and interpreted the birds around them. You admire a beautifully detailed miniature painting of a pigeon, its feathers rendered with incredible precision, a testament to the artist's keen observation. Finally, you reflect on the ultimate power of the medieval pigeon, its ability to bridge distances and connect people in a world utterly devoid of modern communication. From battlefield dispatches to market prices, from religious directives to personal letters, the humble pigeon was the unsung hero of information transfer. It was a vital artery of medieval society, a feathered lifeline that shaped events, facilitated trade, and eased anxieties. Its impact, though often overlooked, was truly profound, a silent testament to its enduring legacy. You watch a final pigeon take flight, soaring into the vast, indifferent sky, carrying with it the whispers of history, a tiny, yet monumental, testament to the ingenuity and resilience of the medieval world. So, as the last echoes of our feathered friends fade into the historical distance, feel your own breath deepen, slow and steady. Imagine the quiet hush of a medieval night, the stars a distant, comforting blanket above you. The worries of the day, like those ancient messages, have been carried away, lighter than a feather on the wind. Let the gentle darkness around you be a soft embrace, a peaceful cocoon. There's no need to chase any lingering thoughts, no urgency, just the gentle drift towards sleep. Feel the quiet settle around you, a profound sense of calm washing over your body, from the tips of your toes to the crown of your head. You are safe, you are warm, and the echoes of history are now just a lullaby. Let your mind become a calm, still pond, reflecting only the gentle moonlight. The stories have been told, the journey is complete. Rest now, deeply and peacefully. Good night.